Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a dan mian, which is loosely inspired by a version that you can find here in Oakland from a spot called Good to Eat Dumplings here in Oakland, Chinatown, on 3rd, 4th in Harrison. They're out of the back kitchen in a bar called that's at the Original Pattern. So if you're here in Oakland, definitely check them out. That's what this recipe is inspired by. Somebody from the Oakland subreddit asked me to take a shot at it, and it was actually a noodle dish that I've had many times, so took a shot at it. There are a couple of things that set this particular version of dan mian apart from most others, or at least what your more traditional dan mian would look like. What's probably most unique about it is that it does not contain any meat, so it is a completely vegetarian dish, which is very unusual. I don't think I've ever had another dan mian that has no noodles or no meat in it whatsoever. Most commonly, you would see dan mian done with some kind of ground pork, usually ground pork or sometimes ground chicken might also work. So this particular version, though, it's completely vegetarian. We're going to take a look at how we're going to work around the fact that there's no meat in it. A couple of things I love about that, not just because it's vegetarian, it's good for the people who ask for vegetarian dishes on the channel all the time. But I also love the fact that because it is vegetarian, it also is very, very pantry friendly. So it makes it very easy to throw this one together if you don't know what else to cook, or if you're just trying to make stuff, make dinner out of the things that are already in your pantry. This is a good one to take a shot at. For those who are not familiar with what a dan mian is, I guess I should have started with that. Dan mian is more or less, a dan mian can be many different things because of the way that it has been loosely interpreted over the course of many, many years that it has existed. But at its core, what it is essentially, it's a sesame paste noodle dish that's tossed using, most commonly probably done with lo mein. Today we're going to do it with sesame paste, but also very, very often you will see it done with peanut butter. Here in the States, sometimes if you can't find peanut butter, if you can't find sesame paste, you might also see it done with tahini. That's especially common here in the States because sesame paste, if you don't live near Chinatown or anywhere near an Asian market, tahini is usually a little bit easier to find. And it is more or less the same thing. Yeah, it's not the same thing, but it is similar. If you're not familiar, tahini being made from untoasted sesame paste, so just untoasted sesame, whereas sesame paste is made from toasted sesame, I believe. Hopefully I don't have that turned around. I think that's right. For our version today, we're going to do it with sesame paste. There is another version over on the YouTube channel that we did with peanut butter, which is actually one of my favorite versions because it's how I used to eat it when I was a kid, which is where you'd see it called peanut sauce noodles. That's obviously a very, very Americanized version of dan mian, but you can make it however you want. I also think that it all makes it like a little bit more approachable if you're based out of here in the States. So the other thing that we're going to be using today, we're going to do this with. Online. Today we're going to do it with some sesame paste. We're also going to do it with some fried shallots, which is going to be how we supplement the fact that there's a whole bunch of protein missing because we're not going to include any other form of meat in it today. So we're going to replace that with some fried shallots. I like to do it. I know that the original version that it was inspired by does it with deep fried shallots. I'm pretty sure at least it's going to be done with deep fried shallots. When I had put together the original recipe, it was also using deep fried shallots, but I also discovered that it was kind of annoying to make and just generally like not a very good use of fryer oil. So because deep frying shallots does not take very long, but after you do it, you kind of either have to throw away that fryer oil or you have to filter the whole thing just because you fried a couple of shallots in it. So I stopped deep frying it because it's just not a very productive way of using fryer oil, which can be pretty expensive. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a shallow fry, and we're going to take a look at how to approach that. If you don't have a round bottom wok, it is a little bit harder to do a shallow fry. So You can absolutely just do this in a deep fry if you want to. Also, if you have a deep fryer, that's a real cool option to do too. But in lieu of a deep fryer, you can do the shallow fry. So as with most of our recipes, we're starting out. That was 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic. Then next up, this is about an inch or about a tablespoon's worth of our ginger. If you don't like doing knife work, you can also grate this stuff too, I guess. You will never see me using a microplane unless I absolutely have to. Not because I don't like them, but mostly because I don't like cleaning them. So, all right. So that's our ginger. Next up, these are my green onions, which you'll notice they're getting a little bit wilty. So we can take a look at that. I kind of just left them that so we could talk about it. You'll notice, so at the ends, this is the first thing that will happen to your green onions when they start going. They start turning brown here on the edges. This is the first part that goes because it's the longest, the oldest part of the green onion, so it's the part that spoils first. The other thing that you'll often see is that it just starts getting like really floppy and dead. So like this at one point was a vibrant part of the green onion. What I always do is just peel it off. If you do see any of this going on, so if it's like kind of like leathery and like not quite super springy, you want to peel that stuff off too, because that's going to be really, really chewy when you're done chopping it. And then the last thing that I always like to do, this will pop up a lot if you've been like storing your green onions in water, is that these little sprouts will start coming out. That's just a sign that the green onion is continuing to grow another green onion. There have been fire engines in my neighborhood all day, so that's fun. You want to peel this stuff out because it's going to get really, really bitter if you don't. Then the last thing that I like to do, I don't know if this necessarily helps, but it actually does help, at least more than a little bit, is I like to run it under some cold water. It's the same thing that I also like to do when I work with like romaine lettuce, because it's basically just helping the green onion sort of spring back to life a little bit. I find that it helps and like just gives it a little bit more vibrance, and if it's like kind of looking a little bit wilted, I find that helps a little bit. Or maybe it's just voodoo science, I don't know. So what I'm doing, I just separated, those were the greens that we just pulled off. And right now I'm slicing up, these are my whites of my green onions. We're going to set these aside, and these are going to head into our wok fry today. Not very many things that are going into our wok fry, which I actually love about this particular recipe, because it is so simple. That basically the only things that really actually get fried today, other than our shallots, is the aromatics and the 3 things that we just chopped. Makes it super, super easy, super pantry friendly. Real simple dish to throw together if you are in a hurry for time. I think if generally when I'm not streaming this dish, I could probably cook it in, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Probably the thing that takes the longest is boiling the water. So these are the greens of my green onions. We're slicing these up real thin, like so. Alright. And we're going to set these aside as well. Cool. So that's a garnish. We're going to set these greens aside for garnish later on. And then we're going to dive into these shallots finally. So if you're in Chinatown, you'll often see a couple of different types of shallots sold. The main one that you'll see is actually not these. These are probably the ones that you'll see in most like American grocery stores, so you'll find it in like Safeway and Whole Foods, stuff like that. When you're in Chinatown, the one that you see more often, I'm probably just going to throw these out, will look like this. They basically just look like very tiny onions, sort of like this. They have a slightly different flavor palette. I actually don't necessarily taste a huge difference to it. Those ones are really old, so I'm going to toss them. What mainly stands out to me about it is that it's much harder to peel. So because you basically have to peel a whole lot more shallots in order to get the quantity of sliced shallot that you want. So what I usually do is I try and avoid those if possible. But when you're in Chinatown, that's generally the one that you'll see most often, which is a little bit annoying. So if you live in Chinatown, you see those floating around. That is a shallot. It just looks a little bit different from the shallots that you're more used to finding. This paring knife out. So, by the way, with a shallot, just like anything else, what we usually want to do, first thing we want to do is peel off this outer skin. This stuff is obviously that's not edible. But the other thing that I like to do is also peel off the first layer. So, this whole thing. Parts of that first layer might be edible, but for the most part, most of it is not though. So, I generally just don't like to bother with it. If you really want to try and like make use of the entire shallot, you can absolutely try and save parts of it, but I find that it's not really worth it. Also, I often chop like 30 pounds of this stuff at a time, so I stopped caring. Yeah. So there's the first layer and the first piece of skin. One more time. That might have been more shallot than I should have chopped up. That'll do. Alright, so you can really chop these shallots any way that you want to. What I like to do is chop them really, really thinly, lengthwise. So we're going to go this direction. It's not going to make a huge difference either way, but I do find that giving it a little bit of a longer cut is going to give it... giving it a little bit of a longer cut is going to give it a little bit more presence in the fry. So instead of chopping it this direction, which would make it a little bit smaller, we're going to turn it around and chop in this direction. And at this point, if you don't have one already, it's very useful to have a sharp knife. It's really annoying to cut shallots or onions without a sharp knife. It's really annoying to cut anything without a sharp knife. But particularly without a sharp knife, when you're cutting onions, it will take a lot longer because your knife's not going to chop all the way through it, and you're going to have to use a lot of downward motion, so you're going to have to push the knife down really hard. So apart from being very dangerous, which it is very dangerous, the more force that you're exerting on your knife, the more dangerous it is to be using it because it means that you're going to have more likelihood to slip. But apart from that, it also just slows things down a lot because you're pushing down so hard. You have to slow down to make sure that you don't chop a finger off, basically. Do not get all of the membrane off. There we go. This, by the way, when you peel the skins off of your shallots, there will be a light membrane still attached. That's this stuff. That's totally normal. But also, you don't really want to eat it. You want to try and have to slice through that either. It's going to be really annoying. More gross shallot membrane. I'm going to chop up, so we're doing, this is almost like 3 or 4 shallots. I don't actually think that you need this many shallots. You probably need maybe like 1 shallot per serving. But I actually think that this is the best part of this dish is these shallots. So I'm going to chop a lot of them, but if you don't like shallots, hold back on them. Alright. The last thing that we want to remember, just like with onions, is that shallots, they're mainly made up of water. So even though this looks like a lot of shallots, this is a whole bowl of shallots here, they're actually going to reduce by at least half once they get into that water. Cool. All right. So that's our shallots. Next up is sauce. So, if you've ever followed this dish along in like street foods, in a lot of like Taiwanese night market street food, you'll even see it in like Korean night market sometimes. Basically, what you'll often see is a large chunk of this dish happening inside of its serving bowl. So you'll see those chefs, they'll like get the actual bowl that the noodle dish is going to be served in, and then they'll put that into the serving bowl, and then they'll put the noodles right on top. So I actually think, I'm pretty sure that the reason that they do that is because since they're making it in like literally on the sidewalk at a night market stall, there's a very small amount of space available for you to for them to like maneuver. So they're trying to like reduce the number of bowls that they use for that sort of stuff. I don't actually think that it's necessarily the most productive way of producing this dish, because it makes it very hard to like stop and adjust and like change anything in that dish. So what I like to do is assemble this stuff off heat first. So we're putting this into a mixing bowl, and then we're going to add it to the wok, and that's going to give us an opportunity to really like taste what's going on. I also, for what it's worth, think that it helped mellow out a lot of the brightness and like all of that acidity that we just put in. So that was 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar and 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine, both of which have quite a bit of acidity going on. So I find it's worth giving that wok cook a little bit more time and opportunity to cook off some of that acidity and brightness. But if you want to do it super authentically, just go straight into the mixing bowl and then just put the noodles on top, and then when you sit down to eat, just give it a toss. That's it. Is there more sugar in a shallot compared to an onion? I don't know if it has more sugar. What I find is that it kind of, so a shallot to me is like an onion that's a lot more concentrated. So not just sugar, but like everything else. So like the brightness, the harshness that comes up front when you bite into an onion, that's a lot more pungent and like fragrant, and it's like really in your face when you eat it with a shallot. Otherwise, they're very similar, and oftentimes when I forget to buy shallots, I'll just replace it with a red onion. I usually like 1 shallot equals like half of a red onion. I don't necessarily think that they're interchangeable, because they do like they do have like the shallot is obviously is a little bit more concentrated, but in a pinch I have absolutely used those two interchangeably. But yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say it's more sweet. I would just say it's like more aggressive and like concentrated, to whatever that means. Send nudes, yeah. Hey Charlie, how's it going? So that was what we just added, or what I'm adding right now. This is a single tablespoon of brown sugar. Before that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons each of rice vinegar and Shaoxing wine. And then the last thing that we just added was 2 tablespoons of lao gan ma, or chili crisp oil. That's where all of the heat is going to come from today, is in that lao gan ma. And also our Szechuan pepper. Oh, right. I almost forgot the most important thing. The last thing that we're adding is obviously the single most important thing in our whole dish today. This is going to be 2 tablespoons of, this is sesame paste. I'm pointing at this, but it has no English on it. Here's some English. This is sesame paste. Sesame paste, if you're in the States, it's very similar to tahini, which if you're like here in the Bay Area outside of the Asian markets, tahini is probably going to be a little bit easier to find, especially if you live, say, near a Mediterranean market. That will be a little bit easier to locate. The main difference being that tahini, I mentioned this earlier, but tahini is made from untoasted sesame, so just raw sesame seed, whereas sesame paste, what we're using today, is made from toasted sesames. So it has a little bit more fragrance. It's also like a little bit more aromatic than your standard tahini. In a pinch, you could use either. They would taste very similar. Or if you can't find either of these things, once again, you can also just use straight up Jiffy or Skippy or any kind of peanut butter that you've got. Either of those will work just fine. And actually, I often make this with just straight up peanut butter. I know the last time that I made this, somebody said that I have to start stirring the sesame paste. But this stuff, no matter what I do, I can't seem to get it to stop separating. So just like If you've ever had like organic peanut butter, where the peanut butter separates from the peanut oil, and then on the top of your peanut butter jar, you have a bunch of peanut oil, and then underneath it is your peanut butter, and then you get like at the bottom of it is some like very chunky peanut butter, which is basically what we're dealing with today. So you get like stuff like that. No matter what I do, I don't know how to stop that from clumping up. If somebody knows a way of keeping this stuff from clumping up, please tell me. But no matter what I do, my mom swears by it. She says store it upside down, so she likes to flip the jar upside down. And then every time that you use it, you flip it back over, and then you have basically what would be at the bottom of your peanut butter jar. I don't think that actually works, mostly because when you it's time to store the thing, all of the oil will come out. So that I actually don't think that's a great idea at all, because you're just going to make a huge mess. So I don't know. Anyway, most importantly, you'll remember that our sesame paste is very chunky. So I'm getting a fork out, and we're going to break up those large chunks here. This camera just keeps freezing. Let me know if that camera freezes again. I don't always notice. It's like not even coming back. Come on. Oh well. Is it gonna come back? I don't know what to do about the space camera. There it is. Alright, anyway, in the meantime, we're whisking up our sesame paste. If you do manage to keep your sesame paste from clumping up, I don't know how, but if you do manage to do it, it shouldn't be quite as difficult. But the main reason that we're whisking this stuff is because sesame paste is very clumpy. We don't want to send this straight into our wok today, because if you do that, that's not going to come apart when you start frying. And then when you go to eat, you're going to bite into a huge chunk of sesame paste, which is never a good thing. So this is pretty much broken down. You'll notice there's still a couple of like larger clumps, or like smaller clumps, but that's okay. We're mainly just trying to bake up those large clumps. Sometimes I get really committed and I'll go through and like get all of those out of there. Today I don't really care. So, all right. Let's see. You up? Yeah. Shallots. So over on the stove, I've got my wok. We're going to get this heating up at medium heat. So we don't want to go at high heat today. We're at medium heat. And then what we're going to do is, so today we're using this round bottom wok, which has one very important property to it, which is that here at the bottom of the wok, it rounds out. So unlike a flat frying pan, just like in the name, as the name implies, the wok has this rounded bottom. So you can see it better if you flip it over. This is very important. It's the reason why the wok kind of rolls around like this, is because there's not a flat wok. So that ends up being very useful for our purposes today in a shallow fry like we are doing right now, because it means that you can deep fry or essentially deep fry something, or essentially shallow fry something in a much smaller quantity of oil, because the oil is going to pool up here at the center of our wok like so. So I'm going to use, this is still a huge amount of oil, but that's maybe only like a little more than a quarter cup instead, as opposed to if we were deep frying, that would take probably closer to like 4 cups of oil. All right. So we're going to do this over medium heat today. I got my shallots in the wok, and then we're just going to give this maybe about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less than 5 minutes here. And that's basically going to very slowly get those onions to start reducing. And over time, they're going to start giving up their water. And we're going to be left with what is essentially the equivalent of deep fried shallots. All right. So over the course of maybe the next 5 minutes or so, you'll notice that a lot of the water in our shallots are going to start coming out. That's going to do a couple of things. As it starts coming out into the oil, the hot oil is going to start making contact with water, which means that we're going to see a lot of sputtering. So if you've ever come across that while you're cooking onions, same concept. Basically what's happening is that as your shallots start giving up water, the water makes contact with the oil, and then you get sputtering. Which is you want to be careful about because that's when you start burning yourself, which is not fun. And I wish this YouTube camera wasn't blowing out so hard. Oh well. Give that a little bit more gas. We're at about medium-high heat now. I'm giving it a little bit more gas because it's going simmering a little bit slower than I'd like it to. Yeah. Let's see. All right. Yeah, it's looking good. So lots of people ask me about like cooking on woks and like doing specifically like I get the question a lot, is that like isn't a wok specifically for high heat cooking? And lots of people get in that mindset is that a wok is intended for just cooking at very, very high heat, which you can absolutely do. Woks are really great for that. But what I actually think is more like an accurate description of wok cooking is that you can do a lot of different kinds of cooking in a wok. That's not necessarily just high heat cooking. You can also simmer stuff. You can deep fry things. You can do things at medium and medium low heat. If you get a good solid carbon steel wok like this one, you could do basically anything that you would do in a carbon steel pan. So like basically what we're doing right now, you can do eggs in it, basically anything that you would do in a frying pan that's made out of carbon steel. So which makes it really, really great for turning down to a medium low simmer and then shallow frying some shallots, like so. Yeah, actually, you just saw that I got banned from Gist Recipe. Yeah, it did. I don't know how that happened. I just like signed in one day, and then one of the moderators told me that I had been banned. I have no idea how that happened. So that's that, I guess. It's a real bummer. Mostly, I feel bad because lots of people like follow me from gift recipes. So I know that lots of people like to watch the content on that subreddit. So. That's okay. We're still going to be posting the same content. I just won't appear on that subreddit anymore. So you can still find all of the same content. All the short recipes will be on the TikTok, on my TikTok and on my YouTube channel on the shorts. Those have always been there, so those will continue to be there. So if you want to find that content, that's where you can look for it. And then, of course, all of the full-length recipes will be up on the YouTube channel too. Yeah, and then I also started posting all the music that goes with all of the gift recipes too. Those are on the YouTube channel. Those are out every Wednesday too. So every Wednesday, new music. Every Friday, will be the full-length recipe videos, and then I think every Monday is going to be the shorts. Such is life, though. Can you be the taste tester? Yeah. Yes, I am down for that. I love feeding people. I do. Alright, so these are coming along nicely. I'm very gradually pulling up the heat here. As we start reducing these shallots, we get nice, we're starting to get nice brown color. And right now we're at more of a translucent state with our shallots, which I want them to go a little bit past that. What we really want is like more like dark browning. And then once they start reducing, we're going to start pulling out more of that sugar, and then we're going to get like more caramel colored shallots here. Vanity, am I on TikToks? Yeah, I am. The TikToks. Let me find it. There it is. TikTok. I think that clicks. That should click. Yeah, and the TikTok, that's where I post all of the GIF recipe content. So if you've been following from GIF recipe, those basically what's happening is like every time we do a full-length recipe, there's a 1-minute version that goes along with it. That 1-minute version, that's the version that you see on GIF recipe, but it also comes up over on my TikTok channel too. So yeah, if you're looking for that content, you want to keep finding it, that's still just going to keep coming up over there. And those are going to be out every Monday. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching. That's cool. So you'll notice if you've been watching these shallots for the last 5 minutes, we've got some nice color coming along here. So we've got all this. Some of it is starting to brown nicely. That's what we're looking for. We want that to start coming along more consistently across all of the shallots. So as we start cooking and as they start reducing, our sugars are going to start concentrating more, and then we're going to get some nice caramelized shallots. So this, by the way, you can also achieve in a deep fry if you want. It would be a little bit more costly to do so because obviously fryer oil is very expensive. You would probably have to use probably close to like 12 or 14 ounces of fryer oil in order to achieve the same thing. But the main difference being that you would have to very accurately and carefully control the temperature of your fryer there. So lots of people forget to do that when they're frying. To pay attention to the temperature of the fryer. You want to make sure you get a very close eye on that, otherwise those things are going to burn real quick. So we're right about there. I think we're about like 90% there. So the last thing that we always want to account for, and I often will forget to do this, but the last thing we want to pay attention to is that when we're cooking or shallow frying, especially anything like a shallot, so you got to account for carryover cook. So our shallots are about 90% done. I would say they could use maybe another minute in our fry today. So we're going to pull it out that last minute early because what's going to happen is we're going to pull these out and then they're going to keep cooking on their own. So if you don't remember to account for that carryover cook, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with overcooked shallots. So they're going to end up burning, and that's never a good thing. You're going to be you're going to be really annoyed because you just spent the last 10 minutes making these shallots and they're going to be burned, which is not the best thing for your dinner. All right, so let's take a look. So I'm just fishing those out of my wok. We're going to leave that oil behind. We could probably keep using that for our wok fry too. Here's how these shallots look right now though. So we've got this nice dark browning color. you'll notice that they are a little, well, you could probably see it. I don't know how well you could see it on the last camera because that camera kind of sucks. But when we pulled them out of the wok, they were not this color. They were slightly prior to this color. So they were like maybe a minute and a half away from being at this color. And then what happened is once we took it out of our wok, they sort of just finished cooking on their own, which is why we have to pull them out a little bit early. Otherwise, we would have burnt shallots, which is not what we're after. All right, so back over on the stove, I'm going to switch my wok out for this pot of water. And we're going to cook our noodles next. So I'm going to get this pot of water going. We're going to do a couple of different things that will look a little bit weird. The main thing is if you are more familiar with Italian pastas, then we're going to do a couple of things that are like real big no-nos in Italian cooking. The first and like biggest thing that we're going to do is that we're not going to salt that water at all. So that we're going to toss these noodles straight into. We're going to toss these noodles straight into our pot today because that's just how most Asian noodles are cooked that way. I don't know actually why noodles are not seasoned. Pasta water is not seasoned in Chinese cooking. Cool. And then next up, the first thing that we want to do, and I actually think you might actually do this in like Italian cooking too, is that I'm going to set up an ice bath here over on my cutting board because what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be doing is cooking these noodles for a very, very brief amount of time. So this wok fry or a pasta or noodle cook is only going to go for I think about. Our noodle cook today is only going to last for about 2 minutes, which means that anytime that you're cooking something for 2 minutes, that you want to be very, very accurate with how long it actually cooks. So just like with our shallots, we also need to account for the carryover cook of our noodles because 2 minutes means that if you pull it off heat, it's going to keep cooking for another like 30 seconds or so. And if you're not super accurate with that, those noodles are going to overcook on you, which is not the right thing to do. So those are our noodles going in. And 2 minutes on the clock. Here we go. This, by the way, these are lo mein noodles. If you can't find these are handmade lo mein noodles, which I get here in Chinatown. If you're here in Oakland, by the way, these noodles, they come from a shop called Yun Hop, which is a noodle spot on 8th and Webster here in Oakland, Chinatown. They make fresh handmade noodles and they sell them for stupid cheap. I think you could buy them for like $1.30, I think, for a pound of handmade noodles, which is dumb how cheap they are. If you're not able to get your hands on ridiculously cheap handmade Chinese noodles like this, you can absolutely use just like dried fettuccine. You could use spaghetti, all of those things. They'll work just fine too. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, by the I think in the first version of Dan Dan Mian that I've done, the one with peanut butter, I'm pretty sure I was using noodles like this, and then I had bought them too early, and then they ended up starting to mold before I had a chance to cook them. So I ended up, when I shot that recipe, I ended up doing it with. I ended up cooking it with just dried fettuccine, which you can do. It's totally fine. It is obviously not authentic, but who cares? Everyone needs to stop gatekeeping Chinese food. It's a wildly cool setup. Thank you. Yeah, we've been like perfecting this setup for, well, since the start of COVID, basically. So we've gotten pretty good at it. We got a lot of cameras. Right. That's right about there. We're at 2 minutes, 1 minute and 55 seconds. And what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is strain off these noodles. The second, also big Italian pasta no-no is we're going to dump dump those noodles right into the sink. We're losing all of that pasta water. So, in a lot of Italian cooking, excuse me, you will generally see lots of Italian chefs say that you got to save that pasta water because pasta water plays a really, really big, important role in how pasta sauces come together in Italian cooking. That's not really something that you do in Chinese food for no real reason other than that's just how the cuisine works. So we're also not going to save any of that pasta water, and I also think same reason why nobody ever salts pasta water in Chinese cooking either, is because you don't ever really use the pasta water. So what we're doing right now is I just took our noodles, we dumped that into our ice bath that was sitting off heat, and then we're going to basically halt the cooking process. And this is just going to help make sure that our noodles don't end up overcooking on us. That'll do it. What are we cooking? Yeah, GWC, how's it going? Today we're doing a Chinese, or I guess it's like a loosely Taiwanese noodle dish called dan dan mian. Dan dan mian, if you're not familiar, it exists in many different Asian cultures. This is why I wasn't really sure if you can call it Taiwanese. It definitely appears in like Taiwanese street food, probably more commonly found in like mainland China street food. But you'll also see a very similar dish in like Japanese cuisine. I know I've seen it come up in Japanese cuisine. You'll see it referred to as tantan mian with a T. In Korean cuisine, I've seen it come up. I forget how it's spelled in Korean cuisine now. But the gist of it is that it's a noodle dish that's tossed in some kind of sesame or peanut-based sauce, and then we throw that all together. Usually done with some meat sauce. So usually that would be done with like some minced meat, minced pork or minced chicken. Today we're going to do it instead of that meat. We're going to do it with some fried shallots, which we just finished. Hello to everyone tuning in just now, by the way. My name is Wesley, this is Wu Can Cook. Today we're doing, as I just mentioned, a dan dan mian. If you haven't yet, if you're watching on Reddit, by the way, head over to the YouTube channel and check that out too. As with everything that we cook on these streams, there's a recipe video that goes along with it. Those come out every Friday. So I want to say like a Friday, like 5-6 months ago, came out this recipe. And we're cooking through it right now, which is what we often do. So right before I finish up, before I start that, if you have not checked out that YouTube channel yet, definitely check out that next. We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month. And we got new recipes that are coming out every Friday. So crispy kimchi fried rice, that's coming out tomorrow, and I'm super stoked for it. Cool, so that's that. What I'm doing right now, so this is a little bit more oil than I'd like. For our shallow fry, this is the perfect amount of oil. For what we're about to start doing, our wok fry, this is probably a little bit too much oil. So I'm pouring out, I want to say that was like, I'm losing maybe 2 tablespoons of this. And that's going to be a little bit better for us. I don't want all of that oil to end up into our wok fry. It would probably be fine at the end of the day. But if I can help it, I'd like to hold some of that back. Otherwise, it's going to make our wok fry unnecessarily oily. All right, so I'm going to let that come back up to temperature. If we're being really careful, I probably should get some of these shallots that are left behind out of the wok too, but I don't really care. All right, I'll get some of those out. So we generally don't want to leave debris behind in our wok as we like kind of move forward with batch cooking technique like this, because anytime that you leave stuff in the wok, it just starts burning like that stuff. Sometimes I just get lazy and I'll leave it behind, and then we just end up with burnt stuff. Honestly, the burnt stuff is my favorite part because it's the tastiest part, but it does mess up your presentation quite a bit. So totally up to you how much you actually care. Any vegan dishes being served? I'm pretty sure that this dish is vegan. Yeah, no, this dish is entirely vegan. And if you're not familiar with it, so there are a lot of vegetarian recipes on the channel. This one being one of them. What else we're doing? We're doing a Hongsao Tofu that's coming up. Hongsao Tofu is like a fried tofu stir fry that's like really, really common in Chinese cuisine. I believe it comes from Cantonese cuisine. That's going to be coming up, I think, in 3 weeks. The vegetarian dishes are always pretty easy to make into vegan dishes. The main thing that you have to do is if there's something that's using a fish sauce, or an oyster sauce, you have to substitute that with vegetarian fish sauce or vegetarian oyster sauce, which is really, really easy to do. Most of the time, in most of the Asian markets that you see oyster sauce sold, you'll generally also see like vegetarian oyster sauce. And most of the Korean or like Thai markets where you find fish sauce, you'll find vegetarian fish sauce too. And basically what that is oyster sauce or fish sauce that is derived from mushroom powder. That's how they make that stuff. And I haven't actually used a lot of it myself, but from what I've heard is they're like almost indistinguishable from each other. So as far as vegan dishes go, you can take almost any of the vegetarian dishes that are on the channel, and that's gonna translate pretty well. Do you do it with broth? Sorry, there's a lot of questions I believe from this fire down. Do I do it with broth? Yeah, so I think this original recipe, it calls for chicken stock. Today I'm just gonna do it with water because I think my stock went bad. It's starting to smell. It's actually, I don't think it's bad, I think it's starting to ferment. And it's got a little bit of a weird flavor to it, which I like. So I'm just gonna do it with water, yeah, you could, if you've got stock, that's gonna be a good one to add. Yeah. Oil smoking, yeah. By the way, if your oil starts smoking like this, it's not a terrible sign. It just means that your wok is nice and hot. So, if you've got the right kind of oil, so we're using grapeseed oil today, that's totally fine. The grapeseed oil is not going to burn on you. It does mean that your house is going to fill up with smoke, though. So, I probably don't want to let that happen for too long. So those are my aromatics going in. That was garlic, ginger, and the white of my green onions. I'm going to give that a toss for about like 10-15 seconds or so. And then this is my favorite part about this whole dish, is that's basically everything that we're cooking today. I want to say the hardest part about what we just cooked was the noodles. So those are our noodles going in. And then last up, here's our sauce going in. And then at this point, this is probably where, if you had it, you could use chicken stock. Today, I'm just going to use some, and it will work essentially the same. At this point, you'll notice when we stopped short, when I was getting lazy. If you were watching earlier, you'll remember I was getting lazy and I didn't break up all of the clumps in that sesame paste. This is why it's important to do that. You'll notice there's all of these clumps that's still hanging around. They will eventually break up if you get them small enough. What I usually like to do is just make sure to turn them and get those like facing the bottom of the wok, and that's going to help break them apart. How come your pans start a fire when you get them too hot? Yeah, that has happened to us a couple of times. That actually, I don't think that has happened to me on a home range yet, but that has happened to me on the wok burners that we use in our pop-up. I'd say that's happened like 3 times now, and it's real scary. Because what you've just done is you just started an oil fire. Oil fires are really tricky because you can't like blow them out. You also can't throw water on it. So usually what I do when that does happen, first of all, before we talk about like how to stop that from happening, first thing that you want to know how to do is what to do when that does happen. Very important. You should know this. When that does happen, just turn the fire off and wait. If you really want to, if you need to get it out in really quickly, usually this is not something that I like doing because you're going to make a huge mess. But if you absolutely have to get it out very quickly, smother it with a towel. Do not throw water on it. Do not use anything that is liquid based because that's just going to aggravate it and probably let it spread, and you can probably burn your house down doing that. So very important, when you start an oil fire, do not throw water on it. You can smother it, use a towel, something like that. What I usually do, especially if I'm not in a hurry, is just turn the fire off and let it burn out on its own. What will happen is eventually the fire will burn off all of the oil that's burning, and that's just going to take care of it on its own for you. That ends up being like my go-to when that does happen. How it's caused, so the way that that's caused, I think, is what's happening is the fire is getting so hot that when you put oil into the wok, the smoke of the oil is actually hotter than where the wok is, and that's igniting the oil. That has only happened to me on a wok burner because the wok burners get so absurdly hot because we're working with two 300 BTUs. I think it may have happened in the commercial kitchen when we're prepping too, once or twice. But generally, that should not be happening to you on a home burner because unless you have like a very, very hot home burner. Oil fires are terrifying. Yes, I 100% agree. It is very scary. But the important thing is that when it does happen, don't panic. The best thing, honestly, the best course of action that I usually take when that happens is just walk away, back away, and let it take care of itself. Kill the heat, let it deal with itself. All right. So I meant to do this in a different order, but here we are. So I'm pulling our noodles out of the wok, and before we finish up, I want to dry toast some peppers, which would have worked better when the wok was still dry. It's all right though. So I'm emptying my wok out, and then what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna give it a wipe down first, get all this remaining water out. And then what we're gonna do is dry toast our Sichuan peppercorn. So, by the way, if you're not familiar, Szechuan peppercorn is the flavor that you're most familiar with when you eat Szechuan food. It's this stuff, these like little tiny peppercorns that you'll see in like basically all Szechuan food has this stuff in it. So if you've ever had Szechuan food and it kind of like makes your mouth numb a little bit, that's coming from the Szechuan peppercorn. It's also, in my opinion, one of like the most iconic flavors to like a lot of Chinese food that you find in America. Just walk away. I did not know this, but that's amazing. You want to buy a wok? What brand would I suggest? Yeah, so yeah, lots of people ask me about that. Lots of people ask about like where this wok comes from. This wok, it comes from a restaurant supply store, so you'll notice when I flip it over too. There's no brands on it. It doesn't even have anything inscribed on the bottom. I want to say the brand was like China something. It was like a random brand. So if you're in Oakland, by the way, and you want to get this wok, I actually have 5 of them because we use 4 of them in our food pop-up, and all of them are super killer. These woks, you can do whatever you want with them. We take them in and out of the trunk. We throw them around. We like bang on them. You will never break this wok because it's literally just a solid piece of carbon steel that's been shaped into a wok. So if you're looking for one like this and you're here in Oakland, I got this one. I got all 5 of mine at Chenko on a 7th and Franklin. And that's a restaurant supply store here in Chinatown. If you're not in Oakland, those restaurant supply stores, they exist anywhere in any Chinatown neighborhood. You'll find one because they're the supply stores that are supplying cookware for basically all of the places in Chinatown, all of like the restaurants in Chinatown. So what I always recommend is if you're looking for a wok like this, look for a Chinatown district and then find out where those restaurants are getting their cookware. If you live near Chinatown though, which is probably the case for a lot of people, because like if you live in the Midwest, you might not have one near you. What I have started recommending is the Joyce Chen wok, which I've used a good bit now, and I actually find that it works really, really well. It's like I think it's like $30. They make a good like flat bottom carbon steel wok. It works really, really well. So. You stole a wok from a Chinese restaurant. There you go. Yeah, take a walk. Yeah, check out the local one in your city. If you're in Oakland, Chenko on 7 and Webster or 7 and Franklin. If you're not in Oakland, find your local Chinatown district. In San Francisco, there's definitely one in the Richmond. There's also one in Chinatown.
Those are the two cities I'm most familiar with. But wherever you see like Chinese people cooking, there's got to be somebody that's selling them cookware, because those old Chinese people are not buying their cookware on Amazon. Those old Chinese people are getting it somewhere, and find out where they're getting it and go buy from them. What also helps is that when you find those supply stores, you're going to be buying them at restaurant supply store prices. So the same wholesale price that your local Chinese restaurants are buying that stuff at. And that's generally much cheaper. So yeah, let me know how it goes. Let me know what you end up buying. All right, so here's my Sichuan peppercorn, which we're going to give dry toast to. These things are stem. Not great. So I'm giving this a quick dry toast, which is essentially I've got my wok. This is dried out. I cleaned it and then dried it out. And now we're just giving it a quick dry toast. You could also do this in a dry skillet. You could do it in a non-stick pan even. Any of those things will work just fine. Basically what we want to do though is give it a little bit of time on heat, and the dry heat is going to start blooming out their aromatic qualities for you. You want to do it over pretty low heat. This is actually burning a little bit on me. So we want to do this over like medium low heat. Our wok is still like a little bit hot from when we were wok cooking, which is why I wanted to do it before the wok was cold or heated up. And that's just going to make your spices a little bit more fragrant. It is, for what it's worth, technically optional. You don't have to do it. But I do think that you'll get more flavor out of your Szechuan peppercorn if you dry toast it first. You can also do the same thing with things like coriander, cumin, star anise pods. You can do all of that same thing. Yeah. So you can't smell this, but it is much more fragrant than when it was untoasted. I can smell it. It's a little bit burnt. It'll be okay though. Yeah, cool. I'm glad I can be helpful. When do you know when the peppercorn is done? Yeah, before it starts burning. When you start smelling that, well, you know it's done when you start smelling it. I also look for a little bit of darkening. This is probably a little bit past the darkened point that I like. But usually use your nose when you start smelling it. Szechuan peppercorn has a very, very specific scent to it when it starts blooming. And then once you start smelling that stuff, that's also the same reason why I didn't turn the overhead on, is because I like to be able to make sure that I can like really smell that peppercorn. Same thing I do, so we use a dried coriander. We do a pickled shallot in our food pop-up, and we use a dried coriander for that stuff. And I do a very similar thing. We do a dry toast it, and then I keep all the fans off so that I can really start smelling it. And then once you start smelling it, that's when you know it's done. But also, if it starts looking black, that's probably a sign that it's done. You feel like you need to step up your cooking game to prepare wok dishes. I actually don't think that it's that complicated. I would say that like some of the European dishes that I've done, like a bolognese, or even like some of the really simple French things, like French omelets, that stuff to me is really, really hard. I actually find like just straightforward wok cooking to be pretty simple. It's basically like, if for folks who have watched these streams before, or if you've watched like any of the recipe videos before, you'll notice that they all follow like a pretty straightforward set of things that happen. We like do a bunch of chopping. We cut up a bunch of veggies, or like do a bunch of prep work, and then we basically get on heat. Then we start tossing with a couple of sauce ingredients, and then you throw it all together. Wok cooking basically happens in one pan, so that to me is like a real game changer. All right, I'm gonna give this a little bit of extra water. That was just a little bit more water because our noodles sort of like tightened up over the course of time where we were toasting that sesame Szechuan. So I'm adding just a touch more water. That's maybe like a quarter cup altogether. And that's really just going to stop those noodles from binding together. And then very finally, we're adding, these are our Szechuan peppercorns. I find that adding your Szechuan peppercorns, off heat. That's not just because we did this out of order, but I find that adding it off heat tends to work the best because it kind of like. Oftentimes, if you do it on heat, the wok heat can just sort of like wash out the whole fragrance of the Szechuan peppercorn. So I like to add it off heat. I've also read that some people like to do it in the wok oil itself, and then just sort of like bloom out fragrance in the wok oil, and then they add it basically very, very first. I found that doesn't really work, but different theories, I guess. Alright, so I'm finishing off. This is our fried shallots, which have now become very, very crispy. Which you also can't see, or you also can't taste or smell, but you will, if you were here, you would notice that our shallots are very crispy. These are exactly how we want these shallots to look. Then last up, we're finishing. These are the greens of our green onions. And finally, just a pinch of our sesame seeds. Sesame seed, for what they're worth. I don't think they taste like anything. I do think they add a nice bit of texture, which is maybe or maybe not worth it. Mostly when you're adding sesame seeds, it's basically just for presentation. But you eat with your eyes just as much as you eat with your mouth. That is not true. I don't know why people say that. But presentation, it does matter though. Cool. All right. This might have even come out better than when we did the recipe video. We had the right noodles. All right, so that's it, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Who Can Cook. Once again, this is a tantan mian, or a dandang mian if you're Chinese, which is a sesame paste noodle dish that's based out of Chinese cuisine. If you're interested, you can find the recipe. Those always live over on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked the YouTube channel yet, that's where all of the recipes live. I'll be sure to link them this time because I often forget to do that. So if you haven't checked out those recipes, definitely check that out next. The recipe video itself is inspired by or an homage to a spot here in Oakland called Good to Eat Dumplings, which is out on, I think, 3rd and Harrison or something like that. So if you're here in Oakland, that's where that spot is. So this dish is entirely inspired by how they do their dandang mian. So if you're looking for stuff like that, definitely check it out. The recipes, those come out every Friday. So I want to say this came out a Friday in like June or something, like It was definitely during this year, so I think it was like June of 2021. We came out with this recipe. So it already lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you're looking for that stuff, definitely head over there next to check out what's going on. We have new recipes that are coming out every Friday. So this Friday coming up, as in tomorrow, we have a recipe video for a kimchi fried rice, which I'm super stoked for. The kimchi fried rice is one of the like really popular dishes from our food pop-up, so lots of people like to get that. That's one is probably like the most popular fried rice burrito. People order that a lot in our kimchi fried rice. So that's coming up tomorrow. Friday after that is going to be, I think we're doing miso salmon tacos, which is part of another series that we do. It's dedicated to Asian fusion foods. So that's when we took some miso, like we're doing a fish taco with some salmon, and we did it with a miso glaze. So that's going to be really tasty. So lots of stuff like that coming up very soon. We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month, and I think we're getting pretty close to. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and give it a subscribe. Lots of fun stuff coming up. If you're not interested, please do not subscribe. I don't know why people subscribe when they're not interested. Yeah, we're here. Lastly, we're also live streaming every Tuesday and Thursday. There's also this stream that's going on behind me, directs to the YouTube channel, and there's a whole list of everything that we're going to be cooking on stream for the next couple of weeks. So if you want to find out what we're cooking next, definitely head over there and check out what that stuff's all about. Cool. Kaylee, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Vanity, yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Super fun to hang out with you all. And I'll see you soon. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Want to be, baby, yes sir. whiskey. Your real sweet strawberry wine. Your real glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your lip all the time. I live for love, all the same old places. Count the bottles always down. But you poured out your heart, and I didn't want to waste it. There's nothing like love to give me yours. It's Tennessee whiskey. Your red sweet and strawberry wine. Ooh, yeah. You're as warm as a glass of beer. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're bad warm as a glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.